That's what this is all about. It's making sure the people that need the help get it quickly.
I want to keep people as healthy as possible for as long as possible and just prevent more deaths from happening.
It's not an easy fix, but it's a fix.
Hello, Central Texas. I'm Gordon Collier. You, of course, remember the way you felt when Hurricane Harvey hit the Texas coast. Watching all the flooding and devastation was a helpless feeling, and many of you were quick to respond. Some of you prayed, some gave money, water, food. Some of you even traveled there in person to roll up your sleeves and help your neighbors get back on their feet. Just imagine dealing with those same issues 1,200 miles from the mainland on an island that's already embroiled in an economic depression, and most of your neighbors are dealing with the very same issues. No communication, almost no power, limited health care, and widespread devastation. That's all a reality in Puerto Rico. We decided to follow some of the donations from here in Central Texas all the way to the mountains of Puerto Rico. We began in a warehouse not far from Round Rock.
This is not the whole thing that we collected in Central Texas. This is like 2/3 of it. We have another 20-something pallets in Austin, another storage unit.
When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, Coral Talavera knew she had to do something.
All this hurricane did was uncover the severe poverty that some people have in Puerto Rico.
Coral is from Puerto Rico, lives in Round Rock now. With friends and family struggling back home, she got busy.
This started in my living room.
She and her brother and brother-in-law started collecting donations: water, food, baby items, medical supplies. The basic necessities that we all take for granted were hard to come by in Puerto Rico.
Hardly anyone has money for burial services. Hardly anyone has money for food, in the center of the island. So don't let your guard down, and don't stop giving, because San Juan is all right and the shopping malls are full again, because the people in the southeast, the people pretty much everywhere out of the metro area need help.
Services are being restored in the metro areas. Some hotels are open, so are the hospitals and the airports. Things are better, but remember where they started. Better doesn't always mean good.
Even though military personnel and other aides start pulling out of Puerto Rico, if they start, it doesn't mean that Puerto Rico is all right. It's really getting started.
So far, Coral and her network have collected more than 70,000 pounds of relief supplies in Central Texas. She's finding out that collecting them is one thing, getting them to Puerto Rico is another thing entirely.
And we have other collaborations with people in other states even that have medical supplies. They have other type of aid that is very, very expensive, and our biggest hurdle has been transporting it to the island.
Tragedies like this tend to bring out the best in some people. Coral and her foundation, Helping Puerto Rico, collected tons of donations for Puerto Rico, but they were having trouble getting them to the island. Another man from Central Texas figured he could help, and he's here with us today. John Sawyer. He works with a company that buys, sells, and leases aircraft. John, tell us how you got involved in this project.
Thanks, Gordon, for having me. We started, with my partners and I, we lease commercial aircraft, in particular cargo aircraft, and we saw the devastation that Maria did on Puerto Rico and realized that we needed to jump into action. So my partners and I used our own aircraft, a Citation, to fly immediately more critical need medicines for diabetics, heart patients. And we saw very quickly that there was over 1 million pounds of donations, but they were just stuck at the airports or in warehouses.
And this is where you can step in and help. Why was this particular mission important to you and your partners?
Well, obviously, the people of Puerto Rico are Americans. And, like I said, charity starts at home. I've told many people, and they may be 1,000 miles or more away, but they're still American citizens, and we need to step up to help them.
Absolutely. Now, you've been working with your partners, and it's called Humanitarian Live Project. How many trips have you made to Puerto Rico so far, and tell us more about the items that you're actually getting there?
So With our own aircraft, we've made about 40 rotations out of Puerto Rico, and we've been able to line up some heavier aircraft, Land, Chile, some of the other larger Federal Express have stepped up with their aircraft. The problem is, you know, e-commerce has taken up a lot of the availability for lift now, especially in the holidays. And so we're really trying to find and secure aircraft. We have over 1.5 million pounds of aid in South Florida to deliver still.
Ready to go.
Ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine another problem is the expense of all this. So far, most of this has been out of your company's pocket.
That's correct. So we just started a website to collect donations. Obviously, anything is great, but we're really trying to get cash so that we can turn that into fuel and logistical support for our aircraft, so that we can pay for the lift to get this cargo to where it's desperately needed in Puerto Rico.
All right, Humanitarian Lift Project, and the name of the company that you have is 30 West.
That's correct.
John Sawyer, appreciate your help, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Gordon.
All right. Well, so Coral had the donations. John and his company had the planes. We decided to tag along and see firsthand how some of these donations made it to Puerto Rico, where they're so desperately needed. It was nearly a Cat 5 when it hit.
The house was shaking, and they were underneath when they came out that the entire house would be gone.
Maria showed no mercy and indiscriminately destroyed or damaged hundreds of thousands of homes.
It takes a long time to recover from a disaster like this.
And lives. The official death toll stands at 51. Dalian Caraballo is a doctor in Miami who grew up in Puerto Rico. She knows better.
There's lack of transportation. There's people that died up in the mountains, and they don't have, you know, a way to come down. They're buried down in their own houses, and those are the numbers that we don't see and we don't have.
So 51 can't be.
No, it can't.
Dr. Caraballo is part of an army, not with guns and bombs, but rather medical supplies and compassion. She works with doctors on the island who know what supplies are needed. She finds the supplies, looks for donations to pay for them, and has them flown in.
We collect them, and we send it out to Puerto Rico.
And with the help of people like
With the help, absolutely, with the help of my angels.
These are her angels, Steve Giordano and Bob Allen. They're pilots for a group called the Humanitarian Lift Project.
After watching the news and kind of seeing what was going on post-Maria in Puerto Rico and hearing about the bottleneck, you know, I started kind of inquiring how we could help.
They learned early on that some of the supplies weren't making it to their intended destinations. But whether they're stolen or handed out.
Bottom line, I mean, you know, one way or another, it's getting to somebody that needs something.
We're tagging along with the Lift Project. Their Cessna Citation is loaded with donations. The HLP has been operating out of their own pockets, making flights to and from Puerto Rico. They help cut through the governmental red tape. For example, you'd think that getting a tarp from FEMA would be easy. Dr. Kenera Thompson says it's anything but.
They have to come down to the main municipal area where FEMA is based to make a formal request or home-by-home assessment.
For a tarp?
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of red tape for a tarp.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of different processes and that, you know, in my opinion, just delays people getting the supplies that they need.
Crispin Perez is with FEMA. He's from San Antonio and volunteered for this assignment. He's one of the few people here who sees a light at the end of the tunnel.
There's progress to be made, and there's progress going on every day. And like I said, we've got the right people on the ground. We've got the right people communicating with the people that are from here and making that happen.
FEMA is here, so is the military, and they're doing what they can to make a desperate situation better. But this battle will ultimately be won by a different army, not with guns and bombs, but human kindness and generosity.
That's what this is all about. It's making sure the people that need the help get it quickly so that they can start getting control of their lives and getting back to as normal as possible.
So now the donations have arrived in Puerto Rico, but they're still a long way from the people in the remote areas where they need them the most. That's where we're headed next, after this break. Welcome back. There's good news and bad news in Puerto Rico. The good, the main metro areas are showing signs of life again. The hospitals are open, the shopping centers, even some hotels, most of them running on generators. The bad news, in the remote mountain communities, many of the roads have been cleared, but they're still months away from getting electricity restored. And clean water is a luxury. We traveled to these areas where we saw how these people are getting by one day at a time, thanks to volunteers. This wood frame house may not look like much by our standards, but to a family of 4, it's home. When Hurricane Maria hit, the family was cut off from civilization for weeks. Now they're sick and getting desperate, but help is on its way. An hour and a half away, this used to be the president's office at the Ponce Health Sciences Center. Now it's a pharmacy of sorts, and the president has a new role.
Gathering medication, medical supplies, some food items, and mosquito repellent, bed nets, tarp, whatever we may possibly need, because we go on these missions, we don't really know what we're going to run into.
MDs, nurses, psychologists, students, and any able-bodied volunteer available pitches in. The caravan is headed to an orphanage in El Juntos, up in the mountains. They're not even set up yet, and the patients are already waiting, including this little girl.
Most of the things that I'm seeing is just skin rashes, dermatitis, infected bites, and stuff like that.
And that's what she has?
Yeah.
There are a lot of illnesses being treated at this makeshift clinic: gastrointestinal problems, skin infections, respiratory problems. But right now, one of the most pressing problems are mental health problems. After all, how can you rebuild if you don't have hope?
It's very overwhelming, but we want to change that. We want to give them hope that tomorrow we will have a better day, and we are here to help them.
For those who can't come get help, help goes to them. Most of the roads have been cleared, but that doesn't mean it's easy traveling. This lady is 95 years old and has lived in this house most of her life. Leaving for a hurricane wasn't an option.
They're completely isolated, so they don't have power. They have no running water, so they're dependent on people bringing water and food items.
The team assesses her vitals, and she's fit as a fiddle. Further up in the mountains, this couple rode out the storm in their basement.
It felt like the entire structure above where they were sheltered was being just blown away.
As the winds whipped, they huddled in the basement for several days, not knowing what to expect when the storm subsided.
They were not afraid for their own safety, because they're very faithful. They knew that there was going to be a greater power that was going to look out for them, and they knew that even if there was damage to the structure, that they were going to be safe.
The road gets rougher, so we pile into Freddie's four-wheel drive Jeep. There's a family still waiting at the end for help. A family that scratched out a living here for 4 generations.
So this is her family. Her father was born here. Her entire family was raised in this land, this piece of land.
They're proud of their mountain home and strong in their faith.
That they wrote that this home is dedicated to the new promise of God.
And while Dad is reluctant to leave, he agrees to go see a doctor.
He's having some respiratory problems, so they're going to go up to the clinic.
Our mission here is done, and now it's time to head back. But the old Jeep has other ideas. And just when it looks like we're stuck, the man we came here to rescue comes to our rescue. A little Puerto Rican ingenuity, and we're back on the road. We were a long way from civilization. We might still be there if it weren't for his help. So far, we've seen how the donations get where they need to go, and our trip is almost done. But there's no sense flying back in an empty aircraft. When we come back, more on some precious cargo that needs to get to Miami. The situation in Puerto Rico in many ways is improving, but any sort of real recovery will take a long time. As we learned while we were traveling with relief teams in Puerto Rico, there are still some major issues that need to be dealt with before any sort of victory can be declared. It's the calm after the storm. Puerto Rico is a stunningly beautiful island. Hurricane Maria tried to take that away, but didn't succeed. Still, the scars remain, and they run deep. This mountain spring was one of the few sources of fresh water around Adjuntos, but there's no guarantee that it's safe. The doctors here at this clinic treat a lot of gastrointestinal problems from drinking bad water. Jose Lopez de Victoria is part of a group of medical students from Ponce. They help the residents here in the mountains help themselves by educating them about safe water, food, and what illnesses to look out for.
We want to keep people as healthy as possible for as long as possible and just prevent more deaths from happening.
These filters work for 1 million gallons.
Tessa Hahn co-founded a nonprofit called 3to5days.org. 3 to 5 days, 3 to 5 days. That's how long we can survive without water. They put together this bucket system that can filter out impurities from practically any water source.
It works with gravity flow. So the more water that you put in, it actually comes right out, and it removes 99.99999% of all contaminants, protozoa, cysts,
so you
cholera.
Put anything in here,
you can put
come out
anything
good.
Except salt water.
The buckets are a part of just about every trip made by the Humanitarian Lift Project. These pilots are helping cut through the governmental red tape to get the supplies where they need to go. Like the makeshift medical clinic in Adjuntos. We just saw a family walk out of here with donations that you brought here. How does that make you feel?
It's awesome. I mean, look, you know, we're making a small dent each time.
This area, way up in the mountains of Puerto Rico, is never going to return to any sense of normal until the electricity service is restored. And as you can see, that's going to take some doing.
It's not an easy fix, but it's a fix.
Crispin Perez is with FEMA. He has no idea how long it will take to fix the grid, but he's confident that it will get done.
We're one of the richest, powerful countries in the world. We can do it.
Our trip is almost done, but our plane won't be empty on the way home. Hilda Soto Mires and her husband are in poor health, and they're not getting better with the medical care in Puerto Rico. They're going with us to see doctors in Miami.
We've transported cancer patients in need of treatment and diabetics that are in need of treatment and elderly folks and children and all kinds of people.
When I asked how long they expect to be on the mainland, they sadly shrugged their shoulders. They have no idea. It's estimated that since Maria, more than 100,000 Puerto Ricans have left the impoverished island. More are leaving every day. Many of them have no intentions of returning. Joining us now is Dr. Charles North, the chairman of the economics department at Baylor University. Now, Puerto Rico was in bad shape to begin with, an 11-year depression, nearly $80 billion in debt. How did Puerto Rico get in this economic shape to begin with?
You're exactly right. When you look at any sort of data series for Puerto Rico, you notice that Puerto Rico was growing and thriving right up until 2006. And then virtually every other measure you could look at hits a peak in either plateaus or turns around. Employment hit a peak and turned around. When you look at their, we call it GDP per capita, the income per person in Puerto Rico, it basically was growing. In 2006, it went completely flat.
And what happened that perpetuated this?
A really important thing that happened was actually a change in U.S. tax law. So in most of the 20th century, the government of the United States did not tax corporate income for corporations earned in Puerto Rico and the other U.S. territories overseas. And Puerto Rico added to that by not taxing income earned in Puerto Rico if you returned it to your in dividend form.
Which obviously makes for a great climate for businesses, and this kind of pulled the rug out from under it. Now, nearly half of the population lives below the poverty line in Puerto Rico, and that was before the hurricane. How does the poverty there affect the island's ability to recover?
Well, a poverty rate of 50% is double the most impoverished state on the mainland. And so if you think about just the difficulties here in Waco, which is nowhere close to that poverty might create for development, it's twice as bad or worse in Puerto Rico. So you have to figure out ways to get resources to people that already don't have them and already were struggling, already didn't have jobs.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that need to come together. Now, it's understandable that Puerto Ricans are leaving the island by the plane load. A lot of them will never go back. How does this exodus of the population, how does that impact the future of the island?
It makes it really hard. You have to have workers if you're going to create businesses, if you're going to produce things and you're going to generate income. And a lot of the people that most want to work are moving away. And so what's being left behind are people who either can't afford to get away, aren't able to work, don't have the skills necessary to work. And so rebuilding is a very difficult challenge in that kind of an environment.
So it's not going to be an easy fix, but any idea what has to happen to get the Puerto Rico back on its feet?
The government's going to have to deal with its debt problem in some form or fashion. Oddly enough, there's a huge debt of about $70 billion plus another 30 or so that is unfunded pension liabilities that the government owes to former workers. That's a lot of money for a 3.5 million person island. It's not a lot of money for the United States government, which spends 10 times that on Medicare every year.
Yeah, well, hopefully the pieces of this puzzle will align, and with some help, hopefully Puerto Rico can recover from all of this.
Sure.
All right. Dr. Chuck North from Baylor University, thanks so much for your time and your insight. Well, one thing that has struck me while doing these reports is the apathy towards Puerto Rico. People tend to think of it as a distant third world country, when in fact it's been a U.S. territory since 1917. But there are those who care passionately about what's going on there, and we've met some of them in this show. And if they weren't stepping up right now, the situation in Puerto Rico would no doubt be much worse. If you can help, I have a list of some of these organizations. They're on our webpage. Go to kwtx.com and click on the Find It button. Thank you so much for watching.